Well, hello again, guys, from here inside St James's Park on a massively disappointing afternoon for Newcastle. Now, I dare say a lot of the coverage and fallout from this game and highlight packages will centre on Newcastle being very unfortunate and Brighton executing something of a smash and grab, really. Now, I want to challenge that because I disagree, and the reason I say that is football matches are played over 90 minutes, not 35. Yes, for the opening half hour and more, Newcastle were fantastic. I think I tweeted at the time, for the first time this season, Newcastle United looked like Newcastle United, and by that I meant built on all of the characteristics we saw 2 seasons ago and when they were at their best last season, on the front foot, from the off. Brighton's game plan, whatever they intended to do coming here, was absolutely torn to pieces. They were forced back, to where the heat lamps are now. No wonder they're having to get the heat lamps repairing that area of the pitch at the Gallagher End, because Brighton and Newcastle were just camped in there during that opening half hour. Newcastle were fantastic. All the combinations were there again. Murphy, Livramento, Tonali down the right, going down the left as well, through the middle, all over the park. They were tremendous, they really were. You've got to give them credit for that. Like I say, they were recognisable from the team of Eddie Howe's intensity mags, that phrase. It was, for me, the best they've played all season, and I think it's important that we do record that. So in wider reflections, and this was the point Eddie Howe made afterwards, at least that was there. That evidence remains that Newcastle are capable of that. They have got back to that level, but it was only for half hour. And why didn't they take the lead during that period? Well, it was, and this is becoming something of a theme now. There was no goal in open play in 7 hours, all competitions. They've scored 2 penalties in that time, but it is that final ball, that cutting edge, that killer pass, that execution, that finish, that little bit of composure. Now, you've done well for 35 minutes and haven't scored. Brighton then go up the other end and score with their first entry into Newcastle's box. More on the goal in just a moment and how it came about. It was such a soft concession, but it's only 1-0 and you're playing here in front of a sold-out St James's Park. There's still over an hour to go. It's still on the back of what's been a very good performance. Why couldn't Newcastle then lift themselves and go again after that? Now, Eddie's just said downstairs with us that he thought it was a good performance for 65 minutes. I would disagree. I would say it was brilliant for 35. I would then say it was okay for the next half hour, and I then say it was very poor. During the last half hour, the substitutions came on, and for once the subs have been very good this season. They didn't help Newcastle. Anything, I thought they hindered them. The Welbeck injury, that 9-minute delay, didn't really help. I think the stadium came out of that feeling a little bit flat. Newcastle lost what sort of fading momentum they had at that point. It went all together, and a little bit of a mess during the final half hour. At no point did I really feel as if they were going to get that equaliser, but they ran out of ideas. I thought even before that, they lost their shape, they lost that intent, they lost that aggression and that real intensity. The opening half hour, yes, it is set a narrative of Newcastle being very unfortunate here, but it's not that allow us to sway and colour what went for me during the final hour. And I'll be true to that. I thought it was 2 vastly different performances, and that would be a concern because it comes back to this now, this seeming inability to score goals. And the point I want to make is, I think for me, it comes back to recruitment. I've made this point over and over, and not just recruitment of this summer, but recruitment of the previous window and the window before that as well. I was writing a year ago, and I know a lot of folk didn't like this at the time, and I thought last summer, the players who came in, Livramento, Hall, Barnes and Tonali, weren't what Newcastle needed. I look at that there still today, the 4 players all played. I would argue Newcastle still haven't addressed priority areas in front of that, and it was the question I put to Eddie afterwards. You've come out of this summer chasing a £70 million defender. Surely now you've got to be looking to divert those funds to elsewhere, namely a right winger and a viable alternative to Isak. If you've got a better alternative to Alexander Isak, who isn't Callum Wilson, who isn't injured, Isak doesn't necessarily have to come back in and start a day after having the best part of a month injured, and he looked like a player who had been out. He ultimately is the one who was culpable for Newcastle, for the chances, for Newcastle not putting themselves in what should have been, as Eddie said afterwards, comfortably a 2-0 lead after half an hour. To revisit the openings, there's one which bounces through the box. Yes, it takes a slight deflection, he kicks it, fresh air, and then the brilliant move, Tonali's pass, Bruno springs him clear, he's through on goal, and he just never looked convincing, did he? He goes straight at the keeper, and within 2 minutes of that, Brighton then go up the other end and score that goal. But to come back to the recruitment, I said this on radio the other night, I was asked about it. They were asking me, what's the feel like around Newcastle? I just said it's Yes, it's good. They've still got a brilliant manager and brilliant players, but they missed a trick massively because in signing players, not only do you improve those areas, say you bring in a right winger, as they had to do this summer and they didn't. You bring in a right winger, not only does it improve the right-hand forward position, which has needed improvement for the best part of 3 years, it brings more out of everybody else. New players inspire others. It brings enthusiasm on the pitch and off the pitch as well, and nothing does that more really than attacking players. Even if Mark Guy came, and I still don't think offensive additions really just bring that excitement around the crowd and around the club more so. And Newcastle just haven't had that this season. And yes, the first half hour was good, but didn't it just all feel a little bit stale and slow and predictable and not very exciting during that final hour? For me, it did anyway. And I look at that and it comes back to, a failure of recruitment. The 4 players I mentioned who came in last summer, Hall and Livramento were the 2 fullbacks there today. And yes, they're okay. There was some good, but are they really a 60, 70 million pound pairing right now? I don't think so. Harvey Barnes, well, he's on the bench, and Sandro Tonali, we'll come to him in just a minute, but then you go forward to the January window, no one comes in. The summer just gone. It's a defender who can't get in the team on a free transfer and a £10 million forward who they won't play. So you've got to go back to Anthony Gordon now, approaching 2 years ago, for a signing for me that the club have got absolutely right and who has had an impact on the starting 11 week in, week out. Before that, every signing was doing that pretty much. Now, to talk about Tonali, his substitution, when Eddie brought him off there on 65 minutes, it was booed by sections of the crowd. Why? It was the right change. Yes, it didn't necessarily work out afterwards, but when you're making a change at that time, had Tonali done enough to warrant staying on? I'm not sure he had done, and we've got to be careful with this booing and this protection order which goes up around him and this immunity to criticism or analysis. The same thing has happened with Bruno in the past. Bruno was very good today, by the way, until he understandably tired. But on Tonali, he's playing in moments. For £52 million, for me, you've got to do more than that. He was very good in the first 10 minutes. He was getting into that inside right channel. He was bursting beyond. He was let down once or twice by poor passes, which either come to him at the wrong angle or didn't come to him at all. And I looked at that and I thought, he's going to have a good game here. This could be his best game of the season. But for a £52 million midfielder, and by definition, midfield means you're involved in pretty much all areas of the game, I don't think he is. I think he is existing in moments, and there are some lovely moments. The pass to Bruno before Alexander Isak goes clear is just absolutely class, and he is capable of that. But he hasn't scored now for Newcastle since his goal after 6 minutes on his debut against Aston Villa. And in a team that is struggling for goals from midfield, they need more, they need a contribution. So Tonali isn't yet at the levels of which we know he is capable. Let's not sort of run away from that. And don't forget that since Sean Longstaff came out of the team 4 games ago, Newcastle haven't won. They've only picked up 2 points in that time. So to look at the midfield, and I'm a big advocate of sticking with what is in theory the best. Tonali, Joelinton, Bruno. I've said on these videos, persevere with that. Give it time to play its way into an understanding, to play its way into form. And there's certainly been, flashes and moments of encouragement, but are they fully functioning as a unit and as 3 individuals even? I don't think they are. I think Bruno's the one who was almost carrying them at the moment. So booing Tonali's substitution, not for me. I think it was justified. He hadn't played terribly, but had he done enough? Had he been wonderful? Was it worth exploring something different in there? Well, yeah, it was, absolutely. Now, what of that Brighton goal as well? Because if we're talking about Newcastle's issues at one end of the pitch in terms of not being able to score goals right now at the other end, they've looked okay. They've looked far better, but wow, what a soft, passive concession that was. They've given away a free kick here, and then I think they're too slow, they're too soft to actually react from the free kick. They seem to switch off as a collective. Lewis Dunk clips the ball up front. Danny Welbeck gets it, and Fabian Schär, I don't know why he stands off in the manner in which he does. He did the same down at Fulham as well for the Raul Jimenez goal, remember, just stands off. Welbeck is allowed to swap passes with Jorginho Rutter. It's then on Tino Livramento to be far more aggressive and do more to put Welbeck off as he bustles into the area. Lewis Hall arrives. He doesn't really do enough either, and Welbeck pokes it into the bottom corner there, and that was Brighton's first touch in Newcastle's area. So that tells you how much Newcastle had been on top, how they had dominated to that point. But nonetheless, after that, I thought Brighton were good. I thought it was almost like muscle memory kicked in. They were teasing the ball around, and there were spells where it looked like Brighton who were the team who were in control. Yes, Newcastle came again, and there was little spells. Anthony Gordon goes through on goal, and that was poor. You know, you guys know what I think of Gordon, but he took it too early, and if you're going to take it early, you've got to take it better than that. Everything about it was just a poor finish. He has a header, which he should probably do better with as well. Joe Linton has a close range chance, so the opportunities were there, but I don't know what you guys think. Tell me your thoughts. At no point was I ever really convinced they were going to get that goal for 1-1, whereas during the first half hour, I honestly thought that 1-0, that first goal was coming in. If they'd done that, I think everything would have settled down on the back of that, and Newcastle would have gone on to win. So these reflections might sound a little muddled and a little contradictory, because yes, there was a lot of good there during the first half hour, but to go back to my original point, you play for 90 minutes, not 35, and for Brighton's manager to claim afterwards that he thought the win was deserved for them in the end, I wouldn't massively disagree with that. I really wouldn't. And you might think that's ridiculous, and of course you can make an argument for Newcastle being very unlucky today and deserving a positive result from it. I wouldn't disagree with that either, but yeah, ultimately the way it played out in the final hour, I thought Brighton got that lead in for spells. They controlled it. They only really massively rode the luck during that opening period for me. The concern for me would be that Newcastle have evolved this season from a team early on that wasn't playing well and was, I use that phrase all the time, they were extracting results, they were finding a way to win. Well, now they're playing better. Manchester City, certainly Everton last time out, and then today they're playing better, but they're finding a way not to win. And that's got to be a concern. You've got to start marrying the two of them together. And with games now against, Chelsea next weekend, Chelsea in the Cup, and Arsenal coming up, there's a danger if the winless run extends to 6 that the confidence does start to take a hit, and there's nothing worse for confidence and the draining of that collective belief than a team that can't score goals. It's almost like that feeling of everything good you are doing in the building blocks in terms of the first 2/3 of the pitch, if that is all being let down by what happens in the final third, then wow, you're all looking at each other thinking, how do you get out of this? And to look at those individuals, Isak, yes, it's his first game back after injury, and there is a degree of mitigation there, but let's not pretend that what went before that this season represented his best. It didn't. Now, I did the video yesterday, and I said the belief that pair and those two getting back together, Gordon giving the run down the left and Isak through the middle, would be the key to unlocking Newcastle this season, and it still might be. Listen, if Isak takes one of those chances, maybe I'm reflecting in this video saying, I told you so yesterday, Gordon had that brilliant start, Isak's got the goal and everything's okay. And I still don't think we're nowhere near crisis point. And I don't want this to sound all too negative. I'm trying to analyse a game in isolation of today, and I think I've been fair and true to what I feel here now. But going forward, they've got to find a way to correct this. Maybe it does just need that first one to go in, and then everything will feel okay. Eddie Howe said afterwards, yes, while he was aware of the stats and he recognised those numbers, he didn't feel as if he was overly concerned just yet. But I don't think we're too far away from that point arriving, especially if the next two against really difficult opposition don't go favourably for Newcastle. Now, the merit stars in ascending order. Now, by the way, I'll post my Mail Sport merit ratings below the line here with the link. And after half an hour, even 45 minutes here, you've got 7s and you've got 8, and you're just sort of drafting your ideas. Come the end, the top mark was only a 7, I think, for Newcastle, and the lowest was a 4.5. Now, in ascending order, the stars, I'm going to go 1 to Nick Pope. I think just because he made 2 saves, which kept Newcastle in it at 1-0, when if Brighton had got the second goal, that would have been it all over with. I thought he was unlucky for the goal. Nothing really he can do about that. It was his first involvement in the afternoon. So no, Nick Pope gets the 1 star on account of those 2 very good saves. 2, well, that goes to Dan Burn. He passed the late fitness test, I believe, going into this one, but I thought he was good. Made 1 brilliant block when Lewis Hall is misjudged across that comes in, and Burn throws his body on the line. There were a couple of other little interventions, one just down in the corner there where Brighton were looking to get away in behind, and Burn arrived on the scene. Now, never did you think after that opening half hour that 1 stars and 2 stars would be going to defenders, players at the back there. It looked as if they were going to have a really quiet afternoon. And the 3 stars, well, that goes to Bruno. I just thought during that first period of dominance, he was brilliant. The pass through to Isak is absolutely majestic. And out of the 3 in midfield, he was the one who was always on the ball. He was the one who was always just picking those little passes to break the lines. I just think he's having had that awful start of the season. He's now in a really good, rich vein of form. And yes, he tired in the second half. They all did. All of my comments on the ratings were, Gordon, Livramento going forward, Tonali, Bruno. They were all brilliant during that spell when the team were good. They all sort of tired and lost their way after that. But yeah, 3 stars, but albeit with a mark of 7 out of 10. Well, that goes to Bruno Guimaraes. Now, one thing to quickly mention before I do go and try and find a warm pub on what is increasingly becoming a cold night here inside St James's. Now, the penalty, and after 8 minutes, and I call it the penalty because I think it was a penalty, the handball, there's a VAR check, and we've seen the replay in the press box, and we've all just turned to each other and said, yeah, this will be given. But then play on, and it just sort of drifts off into the ether, and it's not really mentioned again. I asked Eddie Howe about it afterwards, and he said he hasn't seen a replay of his coach and staff, certainly thought it was. I'd love to see that on Match of the Day tonight, because for me it was an absolute stonewall penalty. Now, would Newcastle have scored it, given how the luck went in front of goal during the remainder of the half? Perhaps it might have been another miss, but no, that was a spot kick for me, and I think Newcastle were massively unlucky in that regard. But overall, were they unfortunate not to take a result? Well, yes, probably, but then you've got to make your own luck, and Newcastle certainly, after the misfortune of falling behind, and it felt like that at that point, they then didn't do enough to wrestle their own fate back into their own hands for me. And to that end, I finish this video saying that it's not massively unjust that they got beat here today. I don't think it was. Now, let me know what you think below the line. I've made my feelings clear, you know. I don't want to sound too negative. There were a lot of positives to take from that, but when positives are confined to 30-35 minutes of a 90-minute football match for 1/3 of the contest, I find it, you know, hard to feel too sorry for the eventual outcome, I must admit. So let me know what you think. Please hit like, comment and subscribe. You know, touch that subscribe button in the left bottom right hand corner, whatever it is. There's the thanks button as well. All of that, please interact, get involved. I've loved it the past week, the video in Helsinki, then again my pre-match video yesterday. You know, I replied to loads of those comments. I thought there was some really good observations and thoughts in there. Do the same again, guys, before I return. We've got a full week to sit and reflect on this, haven't we, before going down to Chelsea next weekend, where I will be. I'll give you one last scan of St James's here after what was, a massively frustrating day for Newcastle, when, like I say, on another day they do come out of here with 3 points and we're reflecting entirely differently. But yeah, there still is a lot for Eddie Howe to think of and a lot to work on ahead of 2 massive games coming up, both against Chelsea and then that one against Arsenal, of course, as well. So it's never not dull here. There's never not plenty to talk about. So yeah, guys, thank you again for watching and take care. Good night.